Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I am your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the secret underground location in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm in Extreme Studios with RDV from the Great Midwest joining me tonight in our own very personal one-on-one review of Bloodsport 1988 with Jean-Claude Van Damme, JCVD, as I like to say. And you know what? I can't wait to get into the Kumite tonight with you, RDV, and tear it up, because I know I'm going to fight to survive and I'm going to win, because that's all I know what to do here, too. Phenomenal movie. This is a career launching type movie. We reviewed this as after our Chuck Norris ones. We went into the 80s ones, got into JCVD. It led to Amy Johnston and other stuff that we've talked about. But since it's been 7 years, we said, you know what? In light of Chuck Norris, let's start re-reviewing some of these 80 ones with a bigger audience too. Love this film. Next week we'll be doing the one after Bloodsport, of course, here, Kickboxer, and it's going to be interesting to see which one we like better. But I love them both. I think they're a lot of fun, and I think they're easily accessible. And I think this is as good as anything Chuck Norris did in terms of making it accessible to a young generation too, and all that. Definitely like it a lot here. What are some initial thoughts that come to mind now after some time has passed since we've last done Bloodsport?
Well, we were talking about you bring up Chuck Norris last week because we did our other movie, The Hitman, with him. We talked about how Canon was switching over to in the 90s, starting into the new guys. You had Chuck Norris was still doing his movies in late 88, but you also had her transitioning, bringing in, we got Jean-Claude Van Damme, and you also had Michael Dudikoff. Van Damme, here's his first leading role. He'd been in a Black Eagle, before this, and he also did No Retreat, No Surrender. This was his first starring role where he actually literally got the job, and just because of the way he'd do it, the splits, we see this at least about 2 or 3 times in the movie, and doing the roundhouse kicks, just fantastic stuff. So if you're Jean-Claude Van Damme and fan, if you've never watched this or never heard of it, you must be like, brand new. you must be young, or just never really got into cinema, or just going back to the past. I know a lot of these kids in it today. I was guilty back then. There are a lot of movies where like, oh, it's in the past. I don't care. I don't care about the new stuff. But no, going back, and this is the exception to the rule. If you like kickboxing stuff, if you love 80s stuff, you got Stan Bush with 2 songs in here. Stan Bush, famously known for in the Transformers movie. You've got The Touch, So his songs here, Fight to Survive, Kumite and all stuff, it's just gets your blood pumping, especially when we get to the Kumite, which is basically the inspiration for Mortal Kombat. Games come later on, like 94, 93. Yes, basically, it's just your blood gets pumping. You get a guy you get a little humor in here, you get a lot of fighting. We get an actor, if you've never watched Revenge of the Nerds, well, he's famously down there. He's this is I believe Donald Gibb, who played Booger in the Revenge of the Nerds, a big old guy, and he's the biker guy here, and they're in like I guess in China, and they go into these like the Triad is hosting, or I guess near Hong Kong. They go there and they basically have the little secret fight, the best. This is what started the best movies. You got all these inspiration movies coming off of this. Best in the 90s. Kickboxer kept continuing even after Jean-Claude Van Damme left the first one. Just a fantastic film. We got Jean-Claude Van Damme at his peak here, I'd say. I'm not when I say peak, but this is a Jean-Claude Van Damme I'll always remember. The young guy, healthy, dancing with the ladies, like you'll see in the second in a Kickboxer, and just literally just being awesome. The muscle from Brussels, and you got the big heavies in here. Bolo Yeung, your favorite guy, Rob.
I love me some Bolo Yeung.
Oh my gosh! And you just forget the lines in here. It's like he's doing little liners. I always forget about those because I'm so focused on this guy's freaking physique. He is literally like when you see like the powerhouse, like Big Papa Pump, skinny legs, big old body, chest.
Skinny legs, get the fuck out of here.
Well, okay,
Bolo Yeung he's
a little bigger than
about 5'8", 5'9", 200, 220. Obviously big.
The V build,
about 5'10", about 190, let's say max. Not quite 200, I'd say. Here's the thing that we've talked about. When we've talked about action films, we talk about everyone always wants to go to Bruce Lee back in the early 70s, right? And then in the American version of that would have been the television show Kung Fu with David Carradine, who was not a martial artist, but it had the Eastern philosophy of certain things, and it's just a very spiritual show. It's kind of like a Western in a way. What I
Mhm.
like about Bruce Lee, even though he died young, we've reviewed his films, of course, here too, is again, after World War II, you had a lot of people coming back home from the war, and also like Korea, Vietnam, specifically in this case here, where you started getting people like eating pizza in the United States became mainstream, lots of different foods, even though depending on what culture and what big city you lived in, you might get exposed to those things, but not like martial arts and things. And so it's amazing to see how China with Jackie Chan did theirs. And we've talked about Golden Harvest. We talked about how
Mhm.
Japan's a little different. We haven't delved into Japan too deeply, but we've done some of it. We talked about the Philippines. We've talked about Indonesia. A little bit of Australia is like a crossover thing. I would say that's, I don't know that that's well defined at this point, but the Americanization of it, and you've got a guy from Belgium coming over in JCVD with a legitimate background. I feel like one of the best takeaways from him, besides him just being naturally a very beautiful man, is that this is very wholesome in a way, a little bit different than Chuck Norris, who said, "Hey, I always tried not fighting,
Mhm.
and if you had to fight, it was because there was a moral to it where you had to." And that's why the less is more in terms of volume was there. And JCVD here, I mean, here's where training montages come from. It's not just this movie, but the whole 80s thing of the blood, sweat, and tears, all that shit of like how hard you have to work to get good at something. And then here, I love it because you get the kumite already being set up. You see the different people from the different cultures setting up, practicing their things just a little bit as a tease of what's coming. And then most of this is set up because of his family. And honestly, he's Belgium, but he's being raised by Asian
Yeah.
parents. And the whole thing with him being blindfolded there, just serving both of them, going through the whole like pseudo tea ceremony thing, and sitting down and pouring them. It's all done in one take. It's not as elaborate as say Gene Kelly, but it's the same type of thing there too. And dad like goes to like karate chop him and he like blocks it. It's like little stuff at that beginning lets you know that you're in for something special here too, with the setup of emotionally why he has to go what he's doing. So yeah, they're gonna go to Hong Kong, which at the time was not under communist Chinese control, it was independent. So there's a secret underground fighting thing, the Kumite, that we're gonna do, and they filmed it all in what was now no longer there, but we've talked about it before, the walled off city or whatever it was called. And
Yeah.
I just like it because you really feel like
Uh,
you're in
Kowloon, it was?
Kulong,
Kowloon?
or Kulong, I think is maybe what it was
Yeah.
called, but,
Yeah.
it's really nice because it reminds me of what we've said about Jackie Chan films where you feel like you're there, right? Really, really interesting way to just get hooked into it, and a young child could watch this without being offended because it's not a gory film, it's not a sexy
No.
film. It's very wholesome in that way. I really thought this
Well,
was gonna launch him to be like America's own little new superhero. I really did.
this
It
uh,
did for a short period of time. He got
watching
him
yeah,
hooked away.
you bring this up, yeah, this is actually a kid could watch this, like obviously a little older adult, like 10, 11. There is a sex in here, but there really isn't though.
Right.
The most you see is little bit is him pulling a speedo on after this, like because the old fashioned days where they have sex, they don't speak, you don't see it. It's just the next morning, you
Mhm.
know.
Right.
Which is interesting because a lot of as it recently been brought up too. A lot of people, there's some people on YouTube have been saying, "Hey, can we go back to the days where sex scenes are pretty much you didn't see them?" And I'll just say this, my 2 cents on that, and we'll get back to the movie, is
Mhm.
that I don't mind sex scenes if they're in the erotic thriller movies.
Right.
Yeah, that's where they belong. Those the whole point. That was a murder, mystery, sex. That was the whole thing. Drugs. Yeah, they go on there. Unless you're
It
looking
was
at yeah, because like I said, because then you knew exactly. Remember the '90s, you knew exactly the genre, which one's the void, which one had stuff. If you want to watch boobies or titties, or you watch slasher movies. If you want to see the Skinamax stuff, you watch the erotic thrillers.
Yes. Yes.
Nowadays it's just kind of thrown in there randomly. It's like okay,
Well, the reason what's unfortunate to me is that it's you go from 0 to 100 when it comes to
yeah,
sexiness. There's the allure and the
yeah,
approach of a woman, various levels of it's different. You can have a woman be sexy and still not
but
look trashy and all that too. But now it's just the woman's empowerment. She can fuck like a guy, and and
yeah,
nobody cares. And girl boss bullshit, and it's just stupid. It's dumb. It's not realistic and whatever. If that's how you want to present it, that's fine. But
do,
if it's
do,
not inherent to the story and it's not needed, if it
yeah,
doesn't elevate it, why do it? That argument, you're right, is mainstream now. But I think we're starting to see culturally with the decline of Hollywood, literally in terms of output production and just terms of quality second screen stuff we've talked about here, that they might revisit it because I love me some erotic thriller stuff. I love me body double where you're
Mhm.
spying on someone. I like when a woman's
Exactly.
undressing and you can see it, but you don't have to see it. I mean, but if it's there, it's
So
you're right. It does not have to be there. It doesn't.
so this girl here, Leah Ayres, who plays the love interest here, she's reported and starts trying to get the
The blonde
inside
coated reporter.
get the scoop. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
She's a very decent, I say pretty looking woman. You
Sure.
know, she's obviously she's older. She doesn't look like she's like 19, 20. She looks like she's probably in her like late 20s in this.
Sure.
Remember women also looked older because we dressed a certain way. You dress formal. You didn't dress a lot of smutty and stuff that way.
Right.
Um, I was looking her up at IMDb, and guess you know where she's from? Do you remember that failed the 90s show called The Brady's? The sequel? She played Marcia or Marcy, in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, apparently she's also a master like yoga, instructor and stuff like that too. So she's actually got some background other than just this movie, because a lot of times you get these people in here, they're one hit wonder and that's it. You never see them again. Like the guy from Ninja Turtles, the pizza delivery boy. He kind of just fizzles out,
Yeah.
Also in here too, you brought up Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon.
Mhm.
Roy Chiao, who plays Frank Doug's and basically mentor, basically his friend, that he went to school with, his father. And so you got connections to Bruce Lee in here too.
Yes.
And the difference between, I'll just say this, I'm not going to knock Bruce Lee. I like Bruce Lee in certain things, and I like this. I like for different things. I like for everyone else. Bruce Lee, I've always liked him in his Kato, because Kato wasn't going up against a bunch of ninja samurais. He was going against a lot of white Americans, your gangsters, whatever, and to take him down, they take him by surprise because he's a little guy, but he knows how to fight. He's a scrapper. When you get but him, I said, Another Dragon, I was more into everyone else in that movie versus Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was just kind of like, okay, he's a scrappy little guy, but he was taking down guys that were like maybe sometimes bigger than him. And I was just like, I don't really believe that. With Jean-Claude Van Damme, the difference is he's got the build, he's got the height, and he even recognized in this movie, which I thought was great about this. He tells his friend, you're going up against Bolo Yeung, go for the stomach, it's his weak point. And again, the guy brushes off.
Right.
So we get a lot of the flashbacks to with his sensei, especially in the last match. Probably the best part of the movie is the Kumite fighting scenes, whether it's small clips in the middle and then towards the end, that last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the build up to a great third act, which is like the majority
Revenge
of
for his
the
friend
day.
who gets injured. Yes.
Yeah.
Similar to Kickboxer, and his brother gets murdered or dies at the hands of the guy, so he gets revenge.
Yeah.
And some people didn't like that, but hey, if the formula works once and it works again, that's good, in my opinion.
Well, formulas work for a reason, and it
that's
doesn't
why
mean
TV shows it all the time.
Yeah. Well, the thing, like the current format for most content production, movies, television shows, is you might have an interesting opening act or strong couple episodes of, say, a 6 to 8, 10 episode season of something. Then you get out of bloat in the middle, and then the third act sucks because people know how to write irresolute or they want to try to be different. And what's interesting here is again, we know why he's going to fight. So when he gets to the third act, we can ignore everything and just watch it play out. We don't have to rely on a twist ending or blood and guts or a big shootout or whatever like that because we're emotionally invested in it. That's not how all movies work, but I think a lot of them do. And the thing with Bruce Lee is he was a martial artist. He wasn't a fighter. He did not compete. Chuck Norris was a martial artist and became a better one as his life got older because he was willing to go learn from other people in different types. He's probably the most complete martial artist as was. Maybe Jet Li might be, or Donnie Yen might be to this day, Ip Man guy I'm thinking of, just in terms of number of forms and katas, but they're not fighters, and that's the difference.
No.
Jean-Claude had a little bit of a kickboxing background, if it's to be believed, because some people say it's not true. I don't know. I haven't looked in it that hard, but there's, like I say, an earnestness in his delivery and the way he looks. He looks very wholesome, and just the silly stuff like when they go to the Kumite, right? They have the special envelopes because they've been recruited, right? And they present it. They're checking the seal or whatever. And then they line up the old bricks, and he goes to do his like little punch thing or whatever, and he's like, and they point like to the bottom one, and then he does it, and then that's like a bonding thing with the guys, right? Because like if I'm there and the bad guy's looking at you and you punch us one, I'm gonna be like booger and fired up for you and be like, that's it, that's what I'm talking about. Even though we're both fighting Kumite,
He
right?
has the beer and he has the American eagle on with the holding a snake and stuff, on the flag on his shirt, and then he has that little bandana thing too. And when you first introduce him, his introduction, Donald Gibb's character, Jean-Claude Van Damme just got on the bus and he's being very polite, respectful to everybody in Hong Kong there. Donald Gibbs comes with a beer, sits down behind this lady, starts macking on her and stuff, and then he puts this in it, and then he's like, "Well, he's short. The buses are really cramped because remember, Asian people are not really as tall, And that's hey, I'm just saying it's not to be rude. I'm just saying. So he puts his leg on top of her thing, and I'm thinking like, oh, is Frank Dux gonna, or Dukes? Sorry, Dukes, not Ducks. He hates that. Is he going to interfere with this? But they kind of just cut away from that scene. I was like, because he's kind of being rude to him. But apparently Frank didn't care so much. The lady didn't care either. And that's the thing too. You go to Japan, and I see this all the time with these videos where these idiots go over, Americans go over there or whatever, and they're trying to do all this influence bullshit, dancing, and being rude. And a lot of people do not say anything because they don't want to get involved. So, and that's I kind of felt how this was too. Like Donald Glib was being very rude to this woman here, but she didn't react,
Yeah, and that's the thing about knowing where you go. Japan being
Yeah.
isolated and historically, very strong in
Formal
terms of not just the
in
religion, but
respect
the
of
power
elders.
structure. They're a bit xenophobic. I mean, in a way, and that's not a negative thing. I think that's an accurate way of describing just how they are. So the one thing that makes this movie almost progressive, kind of in a way, is that we get to see here in America lots of different cultures instead of, hey, commies, bad guy. Russians, commies, Russians, bad guys, whatever, and that's it, because that dominated typical action flicks. But it just, again, you take somebody who's obviously good looking, but not necessarily American because of his accent. I don't think that got in his way here, but just a really attainable physique. I mean, he's not a roided up monster. And a lot of people are like, oh, roids make you strong, and that's the reason why you're big. No, you got to do the work. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see a good-looking man in here. And when he does the splits, like you say, he does it a couple times. When he's in there talking to Booger and he's doing it and he's sweating and he's doing everything here too. I always like to say that when somebody's got a good physical talent, show us early. You don't have to show us often. You don't have to overdo it or do fast cuts and all the stuff like they do now today in martial arts. It's simple and it's effective, right? And it's again, you don't have to think too hard.
You get the montage fighting,
be sucked into it. Yeah,
the montage training. And it very much the training with them is kind of similar to the Jackie Chan kind of training. You see those movies,
definitely dialed down, I would say, but nothing wrong with it. It's just different.
Yeah,
right? But
it's not much comedy, but there's still some training in there. We get to see one of the coolest things we get to see in here is Van Damme really showing off his stuff is the splits. The first time we see it, he's tied to his legs are tied to these pillars, the ropes, and the guy's pulling his arms out. And he's and I'm watching as a guy, I'm thinking like, you gotta be Kendo. and then you get to see him where he does you see above me, he does that face too when he's doing this and he's pulling on, and he's like and then he's at peace, and he breaks the rope, showing how strong he is. He reserved, mind over body and stuff, he master of his own butt, and so. Eventually, we can see how he get trained to how to walk around blindfolded and serve a tea and stuff. This is all stuff preparing from the Kumite, because the old man had fought in the Kumite before. Because originally we know this because Frank, when he was younger, when he was like 12 or something, with a bunch group of kids, they snuck in through the window, went into the dojo, and they were going to take the sword, but he stayed behind. And he went to go pick up the sword, go put it back, and he gets caught by the basically I think his name is Roy or something, or what it was. Anyway, it basically the guy who lives there, and then he meets his son. Those two kind of like form a friendship, with us. They're basically
he just needed to be loved.
Yeah, the two dads get together. He says, we're both here in America. It's like, I'm here to teach, martial science. You're here to teach botany, whatever, or with vine, they're planting stuff. It's like we'd be better if we do basically, as teach each other, help each other out and stuff, being foreigners in America. And I thought that was really cool to see that, because
it's a positive message, right? It sounds a little soapy, right? But I mean, nothing wrong with that.
No, not to say that living in America is a bad thing, but when you both are strangers to something new, a lot of people bond that way, and it's normal. So it makes it really humanizes it. But I didn't care for the actor though. The kid that played supposed to be like a young Jean-Claude Van Damme. The kid didn't like. He looked like Butthead. He wasn't all the way there. And I was like, he did have a. What do you have a? Do you have a Dodgers hat? I can't remember. What was the hat was he wearing?
Well, you got to take your baseball cap off even when you're, going inside and breaking and entering, right?
No.
I mean, you got to have some civility.
So, but you brought up the fact that this we had in '88 we had the either fighting against movies where we're going against the Russians, Afghanistan, which is Rambo 3. And some other movies like that where the bad guys missing action stuff, Iraq and all that stuff. This was basically different because this was basically the best coming into arena in Hong Kong and fighting. And if those who played, like say, if in the 90s you played the Mortal Kombat, you played Street Fighter, you had fighters from all over the world come together. Like it's just a fantastic movie to watch,
I like how with the training, you mentioned how he's there at the bamboo. I don't know how jury rigged that is because there's insurance things and all that, but it's. I've known people that have done boxing and a little bit of fighting and all that too. So it's interesting having these conversations. As a coach, on the side, in my private life, I like to hear about how people accomplish things physically. And for me, bamboo it grows very fast. It's very strong and very light dense. That's why you go, oh, they make everything out of bamboo because it's cheap and they're poor. Well, it's not because they're cheap and poor, because it's readily available and it works. So seeing that bamboo get stretched out and everything there too is something that makes you just think Asian stuff, right? And it's interesting because with the training, which we'd see more in the next movie that we'll do next week, it's a bit more prominent. And so I like all the different styles here. When Booger has his fighter order like that, and he's pumped up, and he points at like Bolo, and he's like, yeah. And he's not cussing, he's not.
I'm gonna kill you.
Like yeah, and then Bolo Lung kind of like
you look at me.
He's like, who, me, right? And then his eyes get big and crazy because Bolo gets crazy eye look really, really good.
Yeah.
And this is juicy Bolo right here, where you're like, he's on a permanent bulk cycle. He's not these American white guys that, man, once I get to 160, I'm gonna do a cut bro because you can't see my abs. Not Bolo. Bolo's always done it right. And then Bolo does the finger shake thing or whatever in his first fight and breaks the guy's neck. And I'm like, this is the Bolo Yeung that made me fall in love with him, because he's been in hundreds of movies as a bad guy. He's been already 15 years in the movie business, going back there with what we were talking about with Bruce Lee. I mean, and people just don't give him the props he deserves. And I thought him in here gave it a lot of credo here, a little bit of a rub, if you will.
Did you know there's a sequel to this movie, Bloodsport 2, in 1996? I never knew that. Daniel Bernhardt is a character, and then you have Pat Morita, is and you have James Hong. I was like, Donald Gibbs comes back, but the only one that does come back is Jean-Claude Van Damme, and they have a character on the cover that looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme, but it's not him. They got a look-alike.
Yeah.
Which was like
all the Bruce L.E. eyes and all the repeats are after he died.
It's like, it's like, what is this? It's like we're talking about Jim Carrey when we saw him, how they has a new face. It's like, is this really Jim Carrey? Is it a clone? That's what this cover looks like. If you look at Bloodsport 2 from 1996.
It's 11 from Stranger Things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Stranger Things. No, but as I was saying, looking at that, Jim's bringing up in the chat. What's up, Jim? He said, I like it more movies where like Bloodsport and Kickbox were put out now. 2024, Cynthia Rothrock, Last Kumite. I was looking at that. I was
That's
like,
one we had on our short list. We said, let's just go back to the beginning and build up to it.
It's a 4.7, but it's supposed to be a reboot of Bloodsport. And that's that.
Well, Lady Bloodfight with Amy Johnston, right?
Lady Bloodfight was the female version of that, was really good too. So, but I gotta ask you, 1988. You're in high school? Out of high school? Where are you at in this?
I'm already on my third job. I am going to junior college because that was the cool thing to do. And all
you're in college, okay?
That's right.
Okay. So you saw Forrest Whitaker. What was your opinion of Forrest Whitaker back? Do you remember back then? Because he had been in.
I remember Forrest Whitaker from I think it was 1982 Fast Times. Kind of being that football player or whatever, getting the tickets for, I think it was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I'm like, man, that would have been a great concert.
You see him Platoon in 86, Good Morning Vietnam, 87.
He hadn't up to me yet.
No. And
Denzel was like rising, and other people were to me. He was there. I knew who he was.
Yeah. So I said, like, here's Forrest Whitaker playing an adult chasing after a guy. We know him as you saw him as a kid in Fast Times at Ridgemont High in '82. So it's like, okay, we're gonna see him in something different. It had been kind of hokey watch. I was like, hey, this is kind of weird seeing Forrest Whitaker in a role like this.
Well, Forrest, when Forrest, the thing is in Fast Times, he's a laid back dude, but
Yeah,
he talks a lot like this. We're kind of
yeah.
quiet, everything, and then it's like I don't think he'd fallen what he was going to blow up in until later.
Well, Phenomenon, I think he blew up in that too. But before that, he was in Mimic.
He was in was it Ghost Samurai, which is kind of an interesting independent film back in the '80s too.
Yeah. He was also in a Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. That's what 1991. That one. And then I was with Color of Money in '86. So as I said, like I just remember him from being like, like in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and then seeing him in Mimic with the giant cockroach posing as humans. I was like, and he might have been. Was he also in Species? I don't think he was. But anyway, my point is that it was interesting to see him in that. And then, of course, if you're watching Miami Vice, like I am watching season 3, you have Lawrence Fishburne, a really young prison guard in that series. I was just like, whoa! It's just like it's interesting these guys when they're really young, and then seeing him like all these years later. Because I grew up. I grew up in the '90s. I was 5 years old by 1990, and then by '95 I was 10, and I'm seeing these guys way 10 years later. Than they would. So they look a lot much older. They're definitely well into their late 30s, if not. But yeah, I was just seeing all these actors pop in here too, and I was looking at the other ones. We had Norman Burton, who was in there too, was the other guy who was also helping him chase down he's from Planet of the Apes, Diamonds Are Forever. He was Felix Leiter.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
There's been so many Felix Leiters.
Yeah, he was in Diamonds Forever, 71.
One of them was the Y50 guy too.
And then he was in the Towering Inferno. And did Crimes of Passion, Deep Space, 1988, and then Fade to Black in 1980. Plus, he was also on Adventures of Wonder Woman, The New Adventures. He was on he played Burt Dennis on the Ted Knight Show. So I'm watching this guy. I'm like, because here's the thing: whenever we review movies, I personally have to go look back to see these actors because I may not recognize them, but then I go and look back like, oh my gosh, they were in that show, Because I can sometimes I can see a face but not a name, and sometimes I don't recognize a face because they're older now. I'm like, oh my god, because it's been like what 10, 15 years probably since I've seen this movie, and before that, probably even longer before I've seen any of the TV shows these people have been in. But so it was interesting to see that Norman Burton's in here too. He gets overshadowed a lot, which kind of sucks because he wasn't a huge actor, but he's recognizable if you watch those shows.
Well, again, majority of actors are not stars. They play the role.
No.
They do what they're going to do, and so nobody in here outshines Van Damme, and that's a good thing because he was unproven at this point, right?
Everyone in this was a B-list actor, or I'd say C-list maybe at this point in their careers.
Well, one of the things
not to knock them, because Van Damme became this movie launched Bolo, Yeung, and at least personally Van Damme's career going forward.
Yeah. And Bolo had been around 10, 15 years, like I say, at this point in the cinema, and he's not an American star, never has been, never will be.
No,
and
he was a martial arts bodybuilder.
Yeah. And the thing with this being a canon film, obviously I would be negligent. My duty as the Extreme Movie Show host here and creator of it if I didn't say this was a canon classic, right? Because that's one thing about canon films that said that I really enjoyed it, is that if you didn't know what this movie is about, you go, you know what? It's by the studio that takes low budget things. They're very tight in their production. You know what you're going to get, a bit formulaic, but they're entertaining and they're fun. You could have like a big budget movie that would be like a Schwarzenegger or Stallone film for the most part and enjoy it. But what are you going to get? One a year if you're really popping them out, maybe every couple years. And it's a short window that you can do that for anybody. And even Arnold and all that, it just drops off. But with canon, you can kind of do it. And it's almost refreshing because you could do stuff that's a little atypical. You can film it in Hong Kong where you're running through the actual alleyways or running on all the boats on the water, where you get, like I say, the voodoo of the location of the lights and the feeling and everything too. And you can take a chance on somebody to say, hey, you know what, if we spend a few million on it and he ends up being a hit, well, now we can bank on him. And that's what they did. Obviously, personally speaking, Jean-Claude Van Damme got into drugs a lot, and he got into a big
Cocaine
bit
boy.
into his head. Yeah,
Yeah.
look, you know, and it just that's what happened in the 90s. But he still works, he still does stuff, he's still successful. But it's just the
Well,
way of it. And as we talked about before recently, when you had movies in the 80s, you had the VHS market that could be
yes.
lucrative, and you also now have DVD and VHS all through the 90s. But again, most content today is made really poorly. It's might be shot well and look good, maybe even have CGI, which I'm not a big fan of. But this whole thing of having a great opening thing, weak middle, and shitty ending pisses me off to no end. TV series, movies, whatever.
Hmm.
And I know, again, I always bring it up for the most part, and I don't do it to pop you or not, but the whole comic book movie thing here about how they just don't seem to have the right spirit involved. And I have to ask you, hey, this is what I think. What does it really mean? And you tell me. But here again, people go, yeah, this is just dumb. He's just like a juvenile teenager, and it's like a fantasy kind of thing. I'm like, well, yeah, and it works. What do you want? This movie was huge, man, back in the day, and people were excited because of this movie. That a year or two later, when the next one comes, they're like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna take a chance on it because of how much I enjoyed watching this one here.
Eh.
Right? I mean, it's what more do you want from a movie?
So we're just. I knew it was gonna be asked. How close is this to ducks in real life? Well, in the movie, is interesting that they say in this movie it's based on the true events of ducks. You know, Frank Dux. You know, it's like, and of course they did, but not really, because later on, the main guy who talked this, Sheldon Lettich, he's the screenwriter who knew Frank. He found he basically had known, you know, for a couple months. He said, and he came up with the idea of Bloodsport. And then Frank told him. Frank told him a lot of tall tales, which he did turn out to be bullshit. But he's produced about participating in the so-called Kumite. Sounded like a great movie, so he took that and decided, let's make it into a movie. You know, and then of course there was one guy named Richard Bender who claimed to have actually been at the Kumite event, you know, with Frank and stuff. But later on, years later, Richard would come on and say, Frank paid me to say this word for word, how to say it, scripted me. So so you know, they knew it was bullshit because Frank was obviously no bullshit liar. Now this is the guy, the writer, saying it. Now that's his side of the events. You know, I've never met Frank. Maybe Frank actually was telling the truth. Who knows? You know, I mean, if it's Fight Club, you're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, and Frank broke that rule.
Mentioned here in the South, and it's not as prevalent as it used to be, but people, and we talked about it because of Miami Vice episode. There's dog fighting, there's cockfighting, there's people who bet on anything right now.
Well, yeah, the girl mentioned like this is the human version of cockfighting. You know?
Well, but the thing too is you know, one thing that was really big here in Orlando at the time is because you had since the 70s you had two professional NFL teams. And Orlando's kind of in the middle if you think of Tampa, Miami, a little closer to Tampa, of course. And here in Orlando at the time, boxing had always been big. We've definitely had
Muay Thai, judo.
Well, I would say amateur boxing, Olympic level type boxing, those sorts of things. There was alternative Olympic sports that people would train here for too, like cycling and stuff like that.
Karate was a big one, though.
Right. Well, there's definitely fighting. I mean, we talk about YK Kim's karate, and we talked about how the movie was filmed at my alma mater, University of Central Florida, right? The Miami Connection, right?
Yeah.
There was a thing here in Central Florida where it was like that, and the thing with boxing was, and there was fighting. This is where the second generation of fighting for George Foreman kind of took place, and so there's a lot of fights just near downtown, near International Drive, where a lot of the tourist stuff is at, going towards Disney. And it was interesting because at the time when you started having, like in Orlando, we had what was called the Orlando Badman Contest. You could sign up. No, I think there was certain age restrictions or whatever like that, but you'd sign a release and you would go fight. And there really wasn't any rules. There wasn't, the boxing kind of rules, right? Because if you're a boxer and you can strike, that's one thing, but you can't wrestle. If you can wrestle but cannot strike, you might have a chance if you can shoot, which means run and knock guy to the ground. Then you hear about techniques like Van Damme. He's he's in Bloodsport, but he's going to do kickboxer. He's a kicker, right? He made the kicking successsul. But again, we get to see these different styles that, unless you're like a hardcore Jackie Chan fan, and
here's the thing, though,
you don't know they exist.
Not Jackie Chan, but Jean-Claude Van Damme coming around at the right time here after Chuck Norris is kind of winding down. Chuck Norris is famous for doing what? His kicks. we get a guy who can also do the flying roundhouse kicks and stuff like that. We see there's in one of the matches here, he does it where he's going against a guy.
Yes.
He keeps doing the roundhouse kicks. So three in a row has happened. I think it's actually against Bolo. I'm not sure if it's against Bolo or one of the guys before him. But Jackie Chan does one after another, and like they can like we also see him in No Retreat, No Surrender. You've seen his how he can his limberness, his fighting style stance, and you add that with his pretty boy looks, his foreign accent. Girls were creaming after him. You know, something that Steven Seagal was pissed about. Because Steven Seagal was never as cool as Jean-Claude Van Damme. Even Jean-Claude Van Damme has cook years.
Look, it's like and I say it not to defend him, but I'm telling you, Steven Seagal had not gotten to the point where he had upset people and pissed them off yet.
No, but I mean,
and he was Star Wars on the rise. He just got too big of himself. I mean, honestly, just like what happens to a lot of people when you get a lot of success, you don't know how to handle it. Things happen, and he's legitimate martial artist. You can say, well, we're working a street fight. Well, yeah, Bruce Lee would get his ass kicked, right? Being honest, right?
I'd say he ended up more like Scott Hall in WCW. The more Seagal went on.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
Seagal's legit. I mean, he's not a fighter, and you look at him now, the way he does it, whatever. I don't even want to comment on it, but
no,
it was refreshing because you have him on the rise, you've got JCVD on the rise. And the different styles and approaches that you've seen here are great because it's like, if you're a kickboxer, you're learning how to kick with your shin, and you got to like kick at a certain angle at it, because if you don't, or you hit it a certain way, you're just going to break it. Boxing teaches you to kind of like be on the side. Well, there's a way you can be completely in front because you can be more efficient, and so you don't have to know fights and techniques to appreciate, hey, this guy's dressed different, he's still a lot smaller, maybe he's faster and quicker, whereas Bolo's jacked, he's going to be in the center and he's just going to bash the shit out of you. It's simple, but it works.
You look at the age difference between Bolo and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme is 65 years older now. You know how old Bolo is? 79.
Oh, man, Bolo just he is. Bolo's brutal in here though, man.
It's weird though. It's like I've always said, Bolo Yeung. You look at me and in his peak here the days, he's like the version of Bane, the Asian version of Bane. You look at him now, he looks like Bane without the venom juice. He's like Batista. When Batista stopped taking the roids, he shrunk down. Bolo still looks good, but he said he's not the powerhouse like he was, the bodybuilder, because he couldn't physically do it anymore. He had to stop doing the bodybuilding. Now, whether he's taking drugs, I don't know. But I'm just saying, this guy was a fine physique. You saw him as Bolo in Enter the Dragon, and did some the clones of Bruce Lee, a lot of stuff. But then he'd go on to do was it for Golden Harvest? He was with Sammo Hung. He was with My Lucky Stars, Millionaire's Express, and Legacy of Rage, where he went against Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee, in 1986. But then it was basically him going in the West now. This is his first movie in the West, Bloodsport. And everyone's like, holy shit, who's this guy? And and then later on, a couple years later, well, he'd be back in Double Impact against, Jean-Claude Van Damme, And then he did other movies like Breathing Fire, Ironheart, 92. And then Fearless Tiger, but other than that, though, his career kind of fizzled out after that, though, as far as for acting, not really much big roles, but as I said, that's the one thing I liked about this. He was very imposing. As a guy, he's got years on Jean-Claude Van. Jean-Claude Kent, and then here he looks about 20, 21 in this. He doesn't look that. He doesn't look that. I'd say the latest, probably the oldest, probably is a mid 20s. Early mid 20s. And because you see him in the later movies, especially in the 90s. All of a sudden, he's just like, and obviously, this is before I knew he was doing cocaine, but like, whoa, he aged a little bit.
yeah, and no cocaine will age you.
Yeah.
Look, it's not. I don't know how authentic all the fighters are in here and their styles, but the physique thing I want to comment on, because it's. If you're gonna look like Bolo Yeung, you're gonna fight like Bolo Yeung. You're not gonna fight like
right
the little
leg,
African guy that's doing a capoeira or however it's pronounced, right? And here, most of the people here are very fit, they're very athletic, but that's the difference between having, a functional physique versus one that looks good. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to be a bodybuilder, the way to do it is to put mass on, then shape the muscle and all that. You don't have to lift heavy. That's powerlifting. Bolo is more of like a power lifter in that sense, not a bodybuilder like Jean-Claude kind of is. Not that Jean-Claude can't lift, but still. So it's amazing because like you got the one guy that uses his elbows. You get Jean-Claude being very he's being a good sport when he defeats the people, but with him, Bolo was going to do like his finishing blow and all that too. They put it in slow motion, and it gets like orgasmic when he does it. And every single time he takes somebody out and all that, it's like he's playing to the crowd, and he's a monster. But what this movie also does is, even though we don't know who these other fighters are, we're not just watching every fight that Van Damme is or Bolo's in.
Yep.
We're seeing two people that we don't even know who they are just to see their styles, because eventually Bolo's going to fight one of them and Jean-Claude's going to do it. So when you said at the beginning of the stream that the third act that you really liked, this is how you do a third act. There's no talking. There's no red herring that's come to light. There's no swerve.
It's the Rocky act.
It is. Just watch it and enjoy it, because the third act's pretty long actually with all the fights. There's a break there where the two people come to chase them down, and they
felt like Rocky IV in martial arts instead of boxing.
Yeah, Rocky IV. What do you do? Figure out why you got to go to Russia.
His buddy gets injured.
Training, and then get there.
Yeah, and he gets pissed off, and the girl is like, "Don't do it! You'll get yourself killed." He's like, "You don't understand it. You want to be." He says to the girl, he's like, "You want to be the best. Prove your dad. That you can be the best journalist." Well, I want to prove my master. Basically, that honor his memory, because the guy pretty much at this point probably already passed away. If he hadn't, he was very much ill. And it's just like, and she kind of didn't understand at first, so he ends up leaving and stuff. And then she even tries to goes to the army guys are looking for him and says, cops is like, my buddy's going to find this legal fight. Go in there and try to save him. I want you to stop before he gets killed. I'm thinking like, lady, it's like, really? It's like, you got him you got a booty call, and now you're trying to ruin his life.
That's phase 2 of the relationship.
Yeah.
Once that happens, then
different. But like I said, this was a fantastic film. I have it on the original. I don't have it on Laserdisc. I'm not that old, But not to say that the Laserdiscs weren't out in the early '90s. They were. You can still buy them. But I have the original cardboard DVD cover, and remember the black part clicks over it. The whole the cardboard cover. That's how old I have that. I've never seen this on VHS though. I don't think I ever did.
Right.
Maybe But so what's crazy about this, as I never really read up on Jean-Claude Van Damme, but you remember No Retreat or Surrender came out. That was his first big break, because before this, he had basically been a stuntman, did some extra stuff in scenes, but he was homeless at the time. A guy living in America, they didn't really have a place to stay, had no work and stuff, and he begged the director, hey, can you get me a job? And he proved himself in No Retreat or Surrender as the bad guy still. So then when this came out, Mark DiSalle, he was the producer of this, he said, I want a new martial artist that's also a ladies' man.
Yes.
And that's where you get Jean-Claude Van Damme comes in,
So it's funny because when I put a movie on or something like that, and I watch a lot of older stuff too. Sometimes I'm watching it downstairs, whether with the dogs or in chilling or whatever, and my wife will come in or like that. And she knows I love Chuck Norris. She knows I love Jean-Claude. She calls him my man crush. I think the guy's great looking. Steven Seagal movies I don't really watch a lot, but I did like them. We've done a lot of different movies here, but there's just something, like I say, wholesome about Jean-Claude and pure that you think of. He's like a superhero in a way. And so he's built up this bond with Booger at the end, and we get to the quarterfinals here, and then they get the big fight there, and
the guy blinds him. It's like, oh, it's a good thing he practiced serving tea when he was with the blindfold.
Well, here's the thing with Evil, the bad guy.
They always cheat the win.
Once we got into the 90s, there's this big change to humanize it, and there's this real big normalization of taking something animalistic like vampires and making them like asexual, like emo boys. And it was kind of, are you serious? and there was not a celebration for working hard to achieve something or whatever. And like somebody like you go, oh well, he's not that big a guy. He's only like 5'8", 200, or he's not a big boy. You know what? I will still say to this day that Bolo really delivers here, because not only does he kill that guy, whatever, and he's amping up, you believe him that he's a badass.
Well, you
And
see that
the contrast to Stas, you don't need his backstory to understand the trauma that he might have survived us to go.
True,
I don't
not
understand why he could be so bad and be wanting to kill people into something like that. He's just it doesn't fucking matter why.
from the very minute we see Bolo, we get the scene here when Frank first goes in there into the Kumite area and he's registering himself. They don't believe that your teacher was this, prove it.
Yeah.
We do the death touch, and he's like, okay, I'll do the top break here. He's like, no, the bottom one.
Exactly.
So everyone comes to stand around, even Bolo. Bolo looks freaking like menacing compared. He's standing there. He's not doing anything.
He's the man. He's the contest, right?
Yeah, from the very beginning, you see him over there, and they're all standing around, and then he does this, and then so they're like, okay, you're in here. And so that was a nice scene. It's like you get to see all the fighters in here, and even the extras in here too. But as it went along, when it gets Bolo's turn to go in there, especially after Donald Gibb says, like, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm gonna kill you next, and Bolo's like, it's like, well, you're gonna go after me, okay? Bolo's turn at fight, breaks the guy's leg. You see the bone sticking out. Oh, and plus they make it even more gross, disgusting. This is after the girl who basically Frank Dux had basically slept with, She found her way in by going undercover and pretending to be the date to this other Asian guy, triad guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And she sees it and she hides her face, I said, I love this, built it up how gross it was. And you see Bolo as he fights. He's the only one that's pretty much like doesn't care. He's breaking people's necks, breaking people's legs, their backs.
There's two things that happen when violence is needed. So
and
you break necks and then you cash your checks. That's what Bolo's doing.
Yeah. He said this is remember it's a fight to the death, which I always thought like that's usually most of the dishonorable thing you can do, fight to the death. When your opponent's down, you don't go after them. And of course, the Bolo, it is like, yeah, taking full advantage of this. I don't care. I'm the best. He's already got the crowd cheering him.
Yeah,
more than him. Yeah, no one else.
They know what's coming.
Yeah,
they know what's coming, right?
So chances are he's probably fought in the Kumite before.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Absolutely. So he's a fan favorite. So it was, you got this underdog Frank coming in there basically after his buddy Donald Gibbs is down, and Bolo basically crushes his skull, stomps on it, and he gets to the hospital. Yeah, they said he's gonna go there and they fight, and the fight scene it's always the best 15 minutes of the movie, or at least 10 minutes of the movie, because you get the fight scene, get the roundhouse kick, and then he's taking out Bolo. Bolo even tries to push the referee in a way, and he's like, really, bro? You're that coward? So what does Jean-Claude Van Damme do? Leapfrogs and kicks him in the face. And then, of course, he has to throw sand in his eyes, so they blinds him. And you get the scene where he's like, oh, I can't see. And you see like the smear lens of the camera. I love how they do that. So they close his eyes, and he's like, that's
the famous scene, right?
Bolo goes to punch him, he grabs his arm, and then he just kicks him in the stomach, punches him, and just judo flips. Yeah, and just like, and he just keeps kicking his ass. And he's like, and Bolo's like, oh, what? How can you fight when you're blind? He's like, and it's like, dude, I guess he's the hero. Yeah, obviously, fantastic movie. We're going to review the Kickboxer, which is a year later, in 1989. Next Tuesday. This is the first time I watched this one in about a couple of years. Same thing with Kickboxer. Yeah. And I'm like, I really love this movie, but I'm like, ooh, am I going to feel different when I watch Kickboxer? Am I going to be like, yeah, Bloodsport was better or Bloodsport was worse? I don't know. Right now they're the same in my mind.
I just feel like they're different. And this one's first.
The only thing I can negative I'll say with Kickboxer before we review it next week. I hated the whole brother aspect. The brother is like he's a kickboxer champion, gonna go there, and then he has to avenge his brother, who's in the hospital. I was like, really? We just went through this with Bloodsport. Why are we doing the same angle again? I always thought that was kind of weird, But just like this movie, they have actual martial arts champions in the second in that movie too as well. So
Yes.
they actually have authentic people. It's not just regular people in there.
No.
Like, you're not just getting a Ryan Gosling, I'm the champion, whatever, or crap. You're actually getting authentic stuff. Stuntmen or people who actually know how to fight. And the camera angle working here is great too. The music is great. Like I said, I don't care what movie Stan Bush is doing. When you get that rock kind of like, this beat that amps you up, it's kind of like Eye of the Tiger. You just want to keep just moving, going. It gets your blood pumping. And definitely Bloodsport is a fantastic movie and probably one of the best, if the best martial art movies. Now, if we ever do rank canon film, movies like Chuck Norris versus Jean-Claude Van Damme, like remember we were doing Thunderbolt or Thunderdome. If we bring that back, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies versus versus Chuck Norris. Ooh.
One detail about this movie that I like, and I know it's kind of simplistic and all that, it feels to me on a basic level, is when they start fighting the first one or two fights, things happen, whatever. But you always get the head spinning with the blood coming out of the mouth, right? That kind of stuff.
The blood draining.
You see the mat. Like the first time it happens between fights, the guy's points at it, and the one guy's like trying to scrape the blood off, right? Wash it, but the stain is still there, right? So as the fights go on, then there's more and more blood stains. They've just left them in there. So when they're in their final fight here, you just see blood stains everywhere, right?
Not only that, one of the guys who's supposed to clean it, one of the fighters gets his gold tooth knocked out. He grabs it and I'm just cleaning this. I got the tooth though, pocket it. That just stands out. I'm thinking man, if this would have been more of a serious movie, that guy would have been killed. It's like, what are you doing? You broke the rules.
I gotta tell you, this is one of the few films that's up there with Bruce Lee that to me makes me go, I want to flex, I want to pose, I want to strike, I want to have a sweaty body, and I want to go get my twin brother and just we start going ahead and going at it or whatever, because that's what we do back in the day, right? As kids and stuff.
Yep. Go get with a girl and pull on my Speedo big underwear.
And nothing wrong with Speedo, bro. I mean, come on, man.
Banana hammock.
Hey, you can't be ashamed of the goods. You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
It's one thing Europeans have right about their the way they wear, and the whole blind thing, the hitting, putting them out, perfect. No, this is a great film. This is they were wanting it to be something, and you can want it all you want, meaning canon and launching somebody, but you know what? You have to try for it. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it and be successful.
I always thought about this.
That's the phenomenal thing about this movie.
For a
launching film.
For a canon film, if they would have put anybody else in this, maybe Judikov could have pulled it up, but not as great as Jean-Claude Van Damme. But I like Chuck Norris in this. I don't know if that would have worked. Different film, Chuck Norris. He always will be a Walker Texas Ranger, that kind of nice guy. I can't see him fighting in a tournament like this. He's like, and then he kicks him in the face. Double kick face, slaps him.
Yeah.
No, no matter what, both these movies are better than Cyborg. I honestly, I get it. Cyborg gets a lot of hate, but it's got a special place in my heart when he goes against the bad guy at the end in the rain.
There's just, there's a certain level of watchableness. But again, to be able to rewatch something, I think means something. It doesn't mean you're a great film, but this one's very digestible, and it's one of those few films that I think you take out. And again, it's late 80s. This is very important to me in the sense that this was the turning point where, we're going to have a new generation of stars, and we kind of did for a brief window. And it goes up against how culturally different things would be in terms of movies and everything else going into it. And that's why this movie's significant, not only for really launching his career, but being that second level of replacing the 80s action stars too, that we still talk about today, 50 years later. So to me, this, is definitely worth it. And also when JCVD goes, it's he's not going to be up there with me as Chuck, but he's significant. He's not just it's not just a cash grab kind of movie. This was a big deal at the time. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, 1988, towards the end of the 80s. 80s were kind of winding down a little bit, as far as stuff. This was this wasn't even America versus taking out bad guys. This was a guy just proving himself. He can be the best. That's why when
it's just Rocky in a way.
It is. It literally is. It is Rocky in a sense, but not in the East versus West.
Not in the American sense.
But, no. But he said he was the first American to win the Kumite.
Mm-hmm.
So, But overall, fantastic movie. Definitely recommend it. It's on Tubi TV right now for free to watch with ads. But if you have ad blocker watching your PC, you can skip all those ads and just watch it. It's an hour and 30 minutes. Definitely worth watching. Alone for just the music, the nostalgia, and if you've been to Hong Kong in the 80s, kind of seeing stuff, a lot of stuff's changed.
Whenever I go international, I always, when I get up in the morning, I do my workout, and I make sure that I'm outside on the patio overlooking the city skyscape, and I'm sweaty. So I try to get many pictures of that as I can, just because I get inspired when I do that. Right.
Whenever I go international, I get chased by cops on rooftops.
Well, that's my look as well too. Yeah. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, live. We're continuing season 2 of a TV show that Professor Pix and I reviewed a year or two back, and that would be Forever Night with Nick Knight. I watched that first episode tonight, and because it's the first watch of me. But they're definitely resetting season 2 for what they're going to be. And then, of course, Sunday night, we're going live with a continuing Miami Vice there, too. We had Easter off and all that, too.
Yeah.
Forgot it was actually Easter, so I'm glad
same here.
Enjoyed it. Yeah, well, it happens, right? And then, of course, you and I, next Tuesday, we'll go right from Bloodsport into Kickboxer. It'll be fun to talk about both these films then. Any other final thoughts?
No, to say I was kind of like, I was wondering what we're going to do, but I was looking at their movies, and I was like, let's do JCVD, and I realized, wait, where are the other 2 movies? Oh, I had them private because they were because the original ones were not that great quality recording stuff, microphone stuff, and just the fact that they, I just wanted to talk about it again. Give me an excuse to talk about these movies, revisit them.
So ladies and gentlemen, if there's any older film that you'd like us to review or re-review, absolutely let it go, because we do pick from that. We do try to cover new stuff there too. It just depends on our themes and all that. We're very organic in our approach. It's not set in stone, and that's one of the things I appreciate, is being able to come on live RDB without having talked about it, having no idea what you're going to say or what all the comments are going to be in chat and everything else there too. That makes it special.
What is RDV gonna say sucks? That's a really good movie, and have somebody in the chat like, you just make them sit down and watch this movie.
In the 80s, if you said Bruce Lee, couldn't fight, you would get into a fight with somebody that would defend Bruce Lee.
But here's the thing:
he wasn't a fighter.
Bruce Lee can fight. He's just not the best. And I think he rose to fame because he died young.
Agreed. Because he's a big, huge star over there. Absolutely. That's when you die young. That gave you a lot of credo back then. Nobody cares.
But he wasn't. But he, like I said, he wasn't. Like super. I wouldn't say he's overrated. But I'll just say this though: Chuck Norris is always the better fighter.
Well, yeah, Bruce Lee's a martial artist, not a fighter. Chuck Norris, legitimate fighter. And also too, we talked about it briefly. Walking Tall, or forget the guy's name that was a ranger that he did a couple movies too.
Kevin Sorbo or The Rock.
No, I'm talking 70s. Anyway, we'll get into it later. Yeah, see you guys tomorrow night for.
If you want us to review and then Kim Bronson, let us know.
Good night now.
Good night, guys.